All right, welcome to the Young Turks. A huge day ahead for you guys. We've got the Bernie Sanders town hall on Medicare for All. That's coming up in about an hour. Anna Kasparian is going to be hosting that from Washington, D.C., obviously featuring Senator Bernie Sanders. After that, we will have a panel discussion for you guys about Medicare for All and that issue and the town hall. And we've got some great TYT hosts to cover that. And then after that, we're not done yet. We're going to be on here for a while. We're going to bring on Nina Turner at Rebel Headquarters to talk about Our Revolution and their stance on Medicare for All. She's, of course, the president of Our Revolution. That's the group that Bernie Sanders started. So it's a huge day ahead for you guys. Unfortunately, also in the news today that I'll be covering the first hour, the Democratic cave-in, why they caved in. We now have quotes from Democrats and Democratic aides, and how Trump has taken it, and it is not going well in that regard, and a disastrous turn of events in something they snuck into the budget bill, and how it creates an unaccountable mercenary army. A great story on that, as in great reporting from The Intercept and Ryan Grimm, disastrous in its results. So all of that is coming up in the program. Let me unfortunately give you two quick stories here in the first segment about shootings and potential shootings. All right. So we have another shooting at another high school in Kentucky, and here we go, round and round we go. And it is, unfortunately, having looked at all the news sites, a relatively minor story now. Now we've gotten so used to school shootings and massacres that this becomes a blip. That's the state of what's happening in America. So CBS News explained that the Kentucky governor, Bevin, and other officials have given an update on the high school shooting, which I'm going to share with you guys in a little bit. And there you're seeing obviously some footage of what happened inside and outside the high school and the aftermath of the shooting. The gunman, whose name is still unknown, was a student at the school and will face murder and attempted murder charges. 2 have been killed, 19 injured, 14 shot, and it is a terrible day in America when it's no other way to call these shootings other than massacres. And I think that we're not using the right word when we omit that. When a massacre at a school where 14 kids are shot, 14 people, 19 in the hospital overall, and it's a relatively minor story in the news. We've become like those lab animals that have been shot so often and so indiscriminately and randomly that we've appeared to have stopped trying to fix the problem. So if you want to know what's endangering our lives, yes, we should talk about terrorism of all stripes. Yes, we should talk about foreign policy issues. Yes, we should have checks at airports. But my God, you want to see what's killing you and your neighbors? It's the guns next door. So yet another shooting at another school, and yet empty talk as always from the politicians. Here is the governor of Kentucky.
Respect the fact that these children belong to this community and to specific families in this community. And this is a wound that is going to take a long time to heal. And for some in this community will never fully heal. That is going to take a process of time and respect. And I'm asking you, please, to respect these families. This is an opportunity for us to show how these situations can be handled. The respect, the love, the sticking to the facts and allowing the process to proceed. I'm just asking you, please, have respect for these families.
What does that mean, respect for the families? Who wouldn't have respect for the families? We all do. We're all incredibly concerned about them. We're concerned about our own families because this shooting is going to happen in a corner near you real soon. It happens every day in America. We have a mass shooting on average about once a day in America. So who isn't concerned? Of course, we're all concerned. So what are you actually saying? What are you actually saying, Governor Bevin? What you're saying is, now this is not the time to talk about guns, okay? So let's not jump to conclusions. Let's not say anything that might actually fix the problem. Remember, I, along with all my Republican buddies, get funded by the NRA. So whatever you do, respect the situation and don't try to solve it. Well, that's how we got here in the first place. You told us not to solve it in the last mass shooting, and the one before that, and the one before that. And after every massacre, you told us, no, you can't do anything about guns. How about we said the simplest regulation in the world, federal background checks. 93% of Americans agree. You know why? Because we're all getting killed out here. And you said no, and you said, and all your donors said no, and your Republican colleagues said no. And now it comes to you, and you with your fake emotions and the pauses. Oh my God, respect the families. Don't hide behind the families. That's what you're doing, you're hiding. Because what you don't want people to say is, Governor Bevin did nothing about the issue of mass shootings and nonstop massacres, and because he got paid by the NRA, and whatever you do on a day like today, don't mention that. Yeah, sorry, we do not agree, we will mention it. The day to fix massacres like this is yes, the minute it happens, that's when you go to fix it. And you told us to delay and delay and delay. And what has that gotten us? Nothing but more massacres at more schools. Guy didn't go in there with rope or a knife. They went there in with, the one thing we know is, went in with a weapon and got to shoot a lot of kids with their weapons. But yet, the Republicans say over and over again, and some Democrats, whatever you do, I have a hobby. My hobby allows other people, including people on a terrorist watch list, including people who have mental issues, even people that have committed violence like domestic violence before. My hobby allows them to murder other people. But I got a hobby. I got a hobby. And whatever you do on a day where we have school kids massacred, don't talk about my beloved hobby slash my donors, is what that politician is saying. My donors want you to buy more and more weapons so we have more and more shooters. But whatever you do, don't talk about it. We do not agree. I don't want another school shooting. It's way past time that we did something about this. Okay, now let's go to another story about a potential shooting, because it's nonstop in America. So Donald Trump attacked CNN over and over and over again. And look, you want to talk about bias perspective in the media. Yes, everybody does it. Nothing wrong with that. That's also part of freedom of speech. But Trump had videos that he tweeted on Twitter earlier, which, in the beginning when he did the body slamming one, I said CNN was getting bent out of shape. It's just a stupid reference to wrestling. It doesn't actually mean violence. And then there was more attacks against CNN, also running them over. And then they're on the bottom of his shoe. And then he does those stupid fake news awards and says CNN is the worst of the worst. And CNN is ruining this country. To me, the worst of any of that stuff, all of that, one of those by itself doesn't mean anything. But in mass, it is constantly telling his deranged followers, make sure you do something about CNN. CNN is the enemy. So that is why I say the worst of the worst is when he said that these news outlets were the enemy of the people. Well, that's what fascists say. That's not what an American president says that has ever read the First Amendment or respects it. So what has happened now? Unsurprisingly, a Trump fan has decided to threaten CNN with murdering everyone in the building. Are we surprised? Don't pretend you're surprised. This is exactly what the right wing agitated for, and here you go. And then they tell us, oh, well, he didn't do it yet, so take it easy. No. If you're in that building and there's a mass shooting every day in America, and this guy's coming saying, I'm gonna kill you all, you'd be insane not to be worried. So let's go to the story here. Talking Points memo explains over 2 days earlier this month, 19-year-old Michigan resident Brandon Greismer made close to 24 menacing calls to CNN's Atlanta headquarters. He threatened to kill everyone in the building in several of those calls, according to court documents filed on Friday. So what was Brandon saying? He called on me and he said, CNN is, quote, fake news. Gee, I wonder where he got that into his head. I can't quite tell. Then I'm gonna give it to you with the curse words. I don't wanna say the N-word, so he said, I'm going to gun you all down, fuck you, fucking N-words. Reference to fake news with racism and violence mixed in. Gee, I wonder where that came from. I can't quite tell. He went on to say, I'm coming for you, CNN. I'm smarter than you, agree to disagree, more powerful than you, I have more guns than you, more manpower, your cast is about to get gunned down in a matter of hours. But what, oh, just trolls online, just trolls. I mean, they're threatening to murder people and put bullets in their heads, but don't worry about it. Meanwhile, Trump is threatening to arrest people he doesn't agree with politically and in the media, but don't worry about it, don't worry about it. I mean, as fascism sets in day after day, we're told not to worry about it. No, thank you. I think we should take precautions. And by the way, great work by the authorities in apprehending this man. Later on January 9th, an investigator hired by CNN traced the calls to a number registered to Geismar's father. Turned out to be the same number that Geismar had used to call the Islamic Center of Ann Arbor in September and make derogatory comments about Muslims, according to police records cited in the same court documents. No, he's also anti-Muslim. Well, I didn't see that coming. Gee, I wonder where he got that idea. And on it goes. Now look, his father, I don't blame him at all. I hold the person responsible, not people around him, not his father or mother, and I get his instinct as a father to defend his son. Of course he's going to want to do that. But he said this comment. He said, this whole thing has been a mistake. He really didn't mean any of it. Now again, as his father, I get that you want to say that. But no, we do not take your word for it, and we do not take his word for it, because earlier, his word was that he was going to murder everybody in the building. In fact, I'll give you one more quote. He said, I'm coming to Georgia right now to go to CNN headquarters to fucking gun every single last one of you. Luckily, he was stopped by authorities before he did any of that. That is a crime. It should be punished as a crime. We defend freedom of speech. I defend CNN's freedom of speech. We defend our own freedom of speech. We defend our critics' freedom of speech. But saying you're going to murder people is not covered under freedom of speech. That is a direct threat. It can be considered assault. And in a country filled with lunatics, all with weapons, you'll excuse us if we take your insane threats seriously and take precautions surrounding it. So absolutely should have been arrested, and thank God they got to him before he actually did anything. It is not cute or clever or part of the First Amendment to go around online or on the phone and tell people that you're going to murder them. This is the state of the country we have now. And some people think, oh, Trump, what's the big deal? Only eroded all norms in the country and has degraded our culture, degraded our Constitution, and brought a culture of violence and hatred and fear. Gee, I wonder what's wrong. This is what's wrong. And if you can't see it, you don't want to see it, and you're probably part of the problem. Young Turks.
Oh, did you guys help us win a Shorty Award last year?
Did you?
In the category of Audience Honor for Best Overall YouTube Presence?
Best Overall YouTube Presence.
We want to win it again this year.
That's right.
We want to win, and we can't do it without your help.
We need you.
We need you.
All right, so here's how we're gonna do it, guys. Look, we wanna win for Best Overall YouTube Presence for the Young Turks, but we also wanna win Best in Overall Facebook Presence and Best Web Series for The Breakdown, which is great. But let me tell you about YouTube Presence. Go to tytnetwork.com/YouTube Presence, which is very logical. Click on the vote in Best Overall YouTube Presence, also very logical. You can log in using your Facebook or Twitter accounts to create a Shorty account to submit your vote. You share your vote on social media, ba-bang, that counts as an extra vote. You're voting like crazy now. Now, do this for The Breakdown and Web Series and in a Facebook presence as well. And you're seeing the links to vote on your screen. And don't worry, we'll have them in the description box below. So easy peasy, you just go right there, just click, boom, you're there. And get a load of this. You can vote once per day all the way to February 22nd.
Every day. Every day.
Go nuts, have fun. You know, we always tell you to get out and vote. This gives you an opportunity to do it over and over again. Sorry, you know, by the end, we might just get tired of winning.
No, and this is great practice for the midterm elections. You know, get that voting muscle in order.
That's right, here we go, ready?
Yeah.
Practice. All right, back on the Young Turks. Let me read some tweets for you. Jim Chilton says, I have a question that I would like to ask Bernie Sanders for the town hall today. How do I do that? Too late. So Jim, that's why you got to watch the show every day or become a member. Okay, but seriously, like we asked you guys for submissions earlier, and we will take questions from the audience, but you had to submit that not a long time ago, but a couple of days ago, so that we actually have time to take the video and then show it during the town hall. So guys, keep watching the show. When we ask you to participate, please participate. Because yes, one of you will get to ask a question to Bernie Sanders today. You'll see in the town hall who that is, okay? Andrew says, so curious, is TYT only an hour and then the town hall? Yes, for today only, Andrew, we got an hour and then in about 40 minutes, the town hall with Bernie Sanders starts, hosted by Anna Kasparian. Anthony says, Cenk keeps saying a shooting will soon or later affect everyone. I have a coworker whose daughter attends this school. She called dad from the girls' locker room telling him that someone was shooting up the school. That is the very last thing that I want to tell you guys, told you on. Jesus Christ, man. It's around the corner for everyone and we're not doing a goddamn thing about it. Oh, the Muslims, the Latinos, the guy who crossed the border. The guy who crossed the border doesn't have a dime to his name, let alone a gun. The guy living next to you probably has 13 guns and is 1,000 times bigger threat. All right, I got a lot more stories. Let's go over here. Okay. So the Republicans are on the warpath on this issue of texts between two people at the FBI who were part of Mueller's investigation in the beginning, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. First of all, it should be noted that the FBI says that there's 5 months of texts missing. That's unacceptable. It's unacceptable when the CIA loses the torture tapes where they tortured people and they had it on tape, and they had a court order to retain that evidence, and they just trashed it. And so I don't know why or how the FBI lost these texts, but it's not an acceptable situation. So now, having said that, there's a piece of information shared by a Republican senator here, which I don't think helps their cause, but of course they're going to twist that into trying to appear that way anyway. So let's give you the context here. I'm going to go to Law and Crime. FBI agent Peter Strzok was dismissed from special counsel Robert Mueller's team after messages he sent that demonstrated a bias against President Trump. So just to remind you of the background here. And by the way, yes, he was dismissed. The minute they found out about the text messages where he was saying that he doesn't like Trump, he was off the team like that. Well, nope, not good enough. Well, if it was a deep state plan, why did they kick him off the team? Why don't they just let him continue? Okay. In one of the messages though, Strzok apparently wrote, "You and I both know the odds are nothing about this investigation coming up with something. If I thought it was likely, I'd be there, no question. I hesitate in part because of my gut sense and concern that there's nothing big there." Whoa, that's super interesting. I thought this guy was part of the deep state conspiracy, according to the right wing, to make sure that he gets Trump. But in text messages from back then, he writes to Lisa Page, "I don't think there was anything to the Trump investigation." Well, then how is he part of a secret cabal? Okay. More from Law and Crime. They say these texts, of course, came well before news came out about Donald Trump Jr.'s meeting with a Russian attorney with hopes of getting dirt on Hillary Clinton, and prior to the guilty pleas of Michael Flynn and George Papadopoulos for providing false statements to federal agents. So you shouldn't take at face value that he thought there was nothing there about the investigation today. That was before the investigation began. But here's the guy who's supposed to be plotting this whole thing against Donald Trump. Why is he saying in private, "I don't think there's a big deal there"? If he was going to do a hatchet job on Trump, wouldn't he be saying, "Oh my God, it's a giant big deal and we're going to go get him"? Instead, he says the opposite. But it doesn't matter. Senator Ron Johnson, a Republican from Wisconsin, twists it and says this. Still, Johnson believes that this is evidence that the investigation has a political agenda. Well, if it's evidence that the investigation has a political agenda, well, then I guess the political agenda is they did not intend to get Donald Trump. The guy that you think is most guilty wrote a text message saying, "I don't think Donald Trump is guilty." Wow, what a plot to undermine him. Ladies and gentlemen, you got him. No, he went in, apparently, even though he really doesn't like Trump, and that is clear in the text messages. He really doesn't like Trump, but he goes in and with an attitude of not only an open mind, but one that actually favors Trump in this investigation. But there's nothing the Republicans can't twist. So then we go to Fox News, of course. Lou Dobbs is somehow still on television. I think it's Fox Business, but he never talks about business. He just talks about conspiracy theories, etc. So he's going to then say, okay, great, let's use this as an excuse of a purge of law enforcement so that we can put the lawless people in charge and we could, hey, anybody got a brown shirt? Anybody got a brown shirt? Lou Dobbs would like one. Let's watch.
The Justice Department and the FBI, again, two agents, an agency and a department sworn to preserve the national security, violating law and order and the Constitution, and denying Congress the fulfillment of its responsibility, which is to oversee those two organizations. This is reprehensible. What do you think can be done most expediently to preserve evidence and to bring people who are in positions of authority to bay to prevent further corruption?
So now, if you started with, hey, they shouldn't have gotten rid of the text messages or should have made a bigger effort to keep them, well, then as I explained in the beginning, I'm with you. You're outraged by that. I don't mind that. I mind it. Fine, of course, you're outraged by it. God bless, right? But then when you take the extra step and say, we need to bring them to bay, these political opponents of ours, okay? Now, you just found a text message of the guy saying, I don't think Trump is guilty. It doesn't matter. Fire anyone investigating Donald Trump. He's talking to John Bolton. John Bolton's a maniac. He's the guy who said we should get rid of 10 floors of the UN building. And then, of course, Bush made him a UN ambassador. He couldn't even get Bolton to agree. He's like, Bolton's like, well, they are the FBI. I mean, I think, don't we need them? Right? And so Lou Dobbs is going to double down.
The rank and file, this is not an issue.
Yeah.
The people who lead the Department of Justice and the FBI are corrupt, they're crooked, and they need to be removed forthwith.
So now we're talking about removing the heads of the FBI, their leadership, and removing the leadership of the Department of Justice. Who would want to remove all the people in charge of enforcing the law? The people that have either already broken the law or are interested in further breaking the law. This is exactly how fascism begins. Those are political enemies. They're investigating our law breaking, well, then we just round them up. And on Fox, they've already suggested not only firing them, but arresting them. Just Lou Dobbs. You know, it's interesting. Trump has been clarifying because Lou Dobbs has been hiding that brown shirt in his closet for all these years. But the minute he gets a chance, all of a sudden he's like, oh, it's time to put it on? Yes, round up our political enemies. Not in America, not according to our Constitution. We're supposed to have rule of law and no one is above the law, including the president. And if you don't respect that, you're not a true American. And look at these Republicans who pretended for all these years to be for law and order, now talking about firing everybody at the FBI and the Justice Department because they're investigating their dear, beloved, crooked, corrupt leader, Donald Trump. They sicken me. All right, now let's go to an actual decent human being. Probably disagree with him on politics on 98% of stuff, but let's take a look at what he's doing. So, you know, Donald Trump, of course, fired James Comey, former head of the FBI. Why? He said on national television in an interview with NBC, because of the Russia thing. He said he was investigating Russia. Well, thank you for admitting obstruction of justice, but he's not done yet. He also wanted to get rid of Jeff Sessions, who's his attorney general, because he wasn't sufficiently loyal enough. He let Rod Rosenstein, the deputy attorney general, appoint a special counsel. So he's agitating, fire everyone who's investigating me. Gee, I wonder why. I wonder if it's because Donald Trump is a criminal who wants to hide his criminal activity. Okay, so now what does he want? Well, it turns out, Axios has new reporting, Attorney General Jeff Sessions, at the public urging of President Donald Trump, has been pressuring FBI Director Christopher Wray to fire Deputy Director Andrew McCabe. But Wray threatened to resign if McCabe was removed, according to 3 sources with direct knowledge. So it turns out Christopher Wray, the hero in this story. Now, I don't know Christopher Wray's politics, and given that he's appointed by deeply right-wing forces, my guess is that he is not going to agree with me on much politically. But if you stand up to people who are trying to destroy rule of law in this country, destroy our Constitution and our system of government, then God bless your heart, you are an American hero, at least on that. So, and by the way, Comey, for all of his foibles and all of his ups and downs, remember, forget Trump, forget Clinton, he also stood up to Bush. When Bush was trying to undermine the rule of law, James Comey stood up. He stood up against Trump when Trump demanded loyalty and said, you better be loyal to me and end the investigation of Flynn, and Comey didn't do it. That's why he was fired. So there are a couple of heroes in our government. So Sessions told the White House counsel Don McGahn about how upset Wray was about the pressure on him to fire McCabe, and McGahn told Sessions this issue wasn't worth losing the FBI director over, according to a source familiar with the situation. So there is Sessions trying to please Donald Trump, going, oh yes, 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 after you told me that I should resign and I'm a loser and I should be fired, okay, now I'll do whatever you say, dear leader, I'll do whatever you say, dear leader. And then he goes to fire the deputy director that Trump doesn't like because of the investigations of himself. And it doesn't work because Wray stands up, and even the White House counsel says, don't do it. It's gonna be an absolute mess. Now, why do you think Donald Trump is trying to fire everyone who is investigating him. By the way, also people investigating Russians like Preet Bharara, doing a massive investigation of Russian oligarchs in the Southern District of Manhattan. And then, even though Trump had said he would stay on, he was fired immediately. And then the case was settled right after that. The Russian oligarchs were free to go. They paid a minor fine in that case and they wrapped it all up. So fire anyone who's investigating Donald Trump or the Russians. Gee, I wonder why, but I'm told there's no evidence. Well, golly gee, what would be the connection of Russia and Trump? Trump being worried about a criminal investigation of himself, what would give you that idea? You would have to be absolutely blind not to see that Donald Trump is trying to cover his own ass and fire anyone who investigates him. Gee, I wonder why. I have a guess, because he fucking did it. That's why. Wake up. Okay, I'm a little animated by that because I've got Russian bots right now on Twitter. Oh no, I think Russia's awesome and Putin is a friend of democracy, but I'm not a bot. No, I have convinced some lunatics that there's no evidence at all. No evidence. Where's the evidence? I don't know. Of course, if somebody's investigating you and you're innocent, you would fire all of them, wouldn't you? At the risk of your own presidency, you would do that. Why? Because you're monumentally stupid? No, because you're monumentally guilty. That's why. I don't see any evidence. Yes, I'm mocking you. All right, let's move forward. How could you not see evidence? Jesus Christ. Okay. All right, we're moving on. All right, this is all in a lead up to my anger about the Democrats. So that was the appetizer. Okay. So the Democrats had a winning hand in the budget showdown. By a 20-point margin, Americans said that they would blame Donald Trump and the Republicans. Well, the issue that they were fighting over, there was two of them. One was CHIP. Well, that has about an 80% popularity. And the other one, CHIP, is Children's Health Insurance. It's been an incredibly successful program. It was bipartisan to begin with. But now the Republicans said in September, we're going to end it. We're going to hold it hostage. We're great. If you don't know anything about politics, you go, oh, you would like to attack me on an issue where I have 80% popularity. Have at it, Hoss. But Democrats are like, oh no. Okay, as you're going to see in the quotes here in a second. And then the second hostage they took was DACA. So that's the DREAM Act, protecting the dreamers. That has one poll had it around 70%. I saw another poll had a popularity of 84%. Oh, you want to attack us on that issue where I have an 84% approval rating? Yeah, have at it, Hoss. But no, what did the Democrats do? Oh no, oh no. And so they caved in. Now, they did this 3-week compromise. Yesterday, we broke down the upsides and the downsides of that deal. But overall, the message that they sent was, we are weak and you can push us around. And even if we have an issue where we have 70, 80% of the American people on our side, we will not fight. So what has happened since then? Well, we've got a White House source telling The Hill, or I'm sorry, telling CNN, quote, Trump wins again. They're rubbing it in. And another administration aide told CNN, Democrats caved. They're gloating, they're high-stepping. So here is Donald Trump. Now, in the midst of this tweet, he's taking the White House sources and he misunderstands and he thinks that CNN is saying this stuff, but he's bragging about it. So that's his usual idiocy. But the thing to focus on is him saying basically, ha ha, Democrats. God, you were so stupid to cave in. So he says, even crazy Jim Acosta of fake news CNN agrees. Trump world and White House sources dancing in the end zone. Trump wins again, Schumer and Dems caved, gambled and lost. And then Trump says, thank you for your honesty, Jim. Hey, idiot, he's quoting people inside your White House. He's not saying that Jim Acosta thinks and CNN thinks you won. But it doesn't matter, the whole point is, they're dancing in the end zone, and then Trump does it publicly. You didn't have to do it anonymously because he couldn't help himself. He goes on Twitter and starts, yeah, we won. Schumer, you're an idiot for ever believing anything I said and for ever giving Mitch McConnell anything he ever wanted. Ha ha. And then one more, he says in a tweet, the Dems have just learned that a shutdown is not the answer. So one more just in your face. Okay, so now we go to the Hill for an explanation from Democratic senators. Why did you guys do it? Well, it turns out, and we're putting it on Schumer, and yes, he's the leader, so he takes responsibility. But no, he has a bunch of cowards in his caucus. Absolute cowards. So, get a load of these quotes. One Democratic senator said, "We went in with a very weak set of cards with 25 people up for re-election." Why in the world is that a weak set of cards? But you have 70 to 80% approval on your issue. Why is that a weak set of cards? Because you're a coward. You never want to fight. Never, ever, 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 ever. Oh, well, I'm up for re-election. Yeah, that's not when you run, that's when you fight. No wonder you lose elections. Oh, I'm up for re-election, I want to just give in, I want to give it to Republicans. What kind of a pathetic person does that? The kind of pathetic person that keeps losing to Republicans when they have 20, 30-point leads. Okay, if that was it, it's, oh, well, hey, Cenk, maybe it's just one guy. Oh, no, I got a lot more where that came from. Another Democratic senator said almost every local news channel he spoke to over the weekend began its interview with the same question. Why did Democrats shut down the government? Oh my God, they asked me a question that was written by the right wing. I don't know if you know this, Democratic senators. You also have this thing called a mouth where you get to speak words out of it so you could make your own position clear. How about you tell the local news guys, I didn't shut the government down. Donald Trump shut the government down. Who's in charge of the government? Hey, maybe as a idiot local news reporter who gets his talking points from the right wing, you don't know that the White House, the House of Representatives and the Senate is all controlled by Republicans. Do you know that, son? Do you know that? Oh, you don't know. Oh, you do know that. So why would you use a right-wing talking point against me? The reality is these programs are enormously popular. Why? You don't want children to get health insurance? Is that what you're saying? You counterattack, you moron. But no, they've never heard of it. They're like, counterattack, fight. What does that mean? Why is the base so upset at us? Why do progressives get frustrated? I can't tell. Okay, here's another Democratic senator. You can't win. I mean, look at the beginning of that fucking sentence, you can't win. I know if you're a loser, coward Democrat, party official, that's what you always think, you can't win. He says you can't win. McConnell used craven politics by putting one group of children versus another, referring to CHIP, Children's Health, versus the Dreamers. No, you can win. You have over 70% approval on both of those. So what do? Here's how you win, because apparently you guys are so stupid you can't see it. But it's not a matter of being stupid. The donors did exactly what they were supposed to do. They found the worst, weakest so-called progressives in the country, and they said, oh, would you like to take my money to be a loser, to be a professional loser whose job is to get their back broken by Republicans? Well, yes, sir, I would. Okay, good, here's millions of dollars to go lose for a living. So what do? You protect both sets of children. The Democrats never thought of that, protecting both sets of children. We're popular on both issues. Well, how come nobody told us that? We did tell you. And you're like, oh, but you gave in, as always. Now, it turns out, though, one of the reasons that some of the Democrats wanted to fight actually had nothing to do with the children, had nothing to do with the DREAM Act. Get a load of this. The shutdown battle became portrayed in the media as Democrats taking a stand for Dreamers facing deportation. But Democratic senators say that was only a small part of it. They felt they had to object to the month-long spending bill House Republicans unveiled earlier last week because it had no input from Democrats. Oh, turns out the only reason they wanted to fight was because, oh, well, I do declare I have had no input at all. That affects me. The Dreamers, that doesn't affect me. My kids aren't Dreamers. Children's health insurance, I'm rich, I don't need that. That doesn't affect me. My power and privileges were trampled upon? Well, then I do declare I might fight a little bit and then give up. One more along those lines. Democrats felt the lack of consultation and the failure to address their non-immigration priorities were so insulting that they had to take a stand. So for a couple of days, because they weren't consulted, not because of you, not because they care about you, not because they care about any of those issues, but because they felt personally insulted, They did a BS kabuki theater, stand for a couple of days, and then buckled. And one last piece of, I keep saying it over and over because they earned it, cowardice. There was another Democratic senator, there was inexorable trajectory towards now my anxiety is officially high. It's a week later, and what are we doing here? You understand that? Oh, the government shutdown has gone on a couple of days, my anxiety is so high. They're never gonna fight, never. So, hey, great, let's run primaries against them, and we are. I mean, go pick any group you like. You pick the Justice Democrats, pick another group, pick any group you like. Just primary the hell out of these guys. Because as long as they're in charge, resistance is a joke. It's a punchline, it's a gimmick. They're never gonna resist. All they're gonna do, the minute they meet this much of actual resistance, oh my God, a local reporter asked me a question. The shutdown went on for a couple of days. They fold, they fold, they fold, they fold. That's all they ever do. Get them all out. They're all bums, they're not progressives. They never cared about you. All they care about is their own power and privileges. Throw them all out. Get real progressives, uncorrupted progressives. If they're taking big corporate money, they're gonna care about the stock market, their beloved, beloved stock market, 1,000 times more than they'll ever care about you. Get them all out. Young Turks. Back on the Young Turks, Billy Runaway writes in, Trump ran that ad saying the Democrats would be complicit in any murder committed by an illegal alien. The DNC should run an ad saying Republicans are complicit in gun violence. Yes, they absolutely should, but they won't. Why? A local news reporter might ask them about it. The Republicans might attack. Joe Biden today came out, and I like Joe Biden. He's an okay guy. I don't think he should run for president, but he came out and said, well, part of the reason we didn't talk about the Russia meddling during the election, even though the FBI warned us about it, was because of what Steve Bannon might say. Oh, for fuck's sake. God, they're so sad, man. Who gives a fuck what Steve Bannon's gonna say? They're so scared of the Republicans, it's just pathetic to look at. Anyway, look, we got a town hall on issues, Medicare for all, and during that tweet at hashtag Medicare for all, and we'll see those tweets. We're gonna cover it here. Me, John, and Jimmy will be in the studio, and Anna Kasparian's, of course, hosting the event, and Bernie Sanders is featured. All right, let me give you the last couple of stories here. Okay, so Chuck Schumer was beat up by a lot of the activists and progressive base when he caved in to Donald Trump. Then Donald Trump danced on his grave a little bit by leaking quotes like "Ha ha, Trump wins," and then he wasn't done with the leaks, so he rubbed it in a little bit more on Twitter, saying "We won, you lost." So now Chuck Schumer's decided, oh yeah, maybe we aren't gonna do a deal. All right, whatever. Okay, good. It's a good first step. Let me quote Politico here. The Senate Minority Leader, through an aide, informed the White House on Monday that he was retracting the offer he made last week to give Trump well north of $1.6 billion in wall funding Trump had asked for this year, according to 2 Democrats. Too little, meet too late. But I'll take it, whatever tiny progress Democrats make when they come out of their shell for a little bit, I guess should be encouraged. So I'll give you more here. And now they say Trump will simply not get a better deal than that on his signature campaign promise. So look, understand that, 2 different quotes. Oh yeah, the $1.6 billion we're gonna give you, now we're not gonna give it to you. And that's the best deal you'll ever get. So that means you are gonna give it to him. And by the way, they'll give him even more. They're Democrats, trust me. And Dick Durbin says about Schumer, he called the White House yesterday and said it's over. Who are you guys kidding? Everybody knows who you are. The minute Trump and the Republicans and Mitch McConnell call you with promises, you're gonna come running. You think what, the Democrats aren't gonna negotiate anymore? They're not gonna give anything for the wall? Inconceivable. Okay, all right, they decided, well, after we lost, we decided to put on some armor. They continue here at Politico. The president has now, according to the Democrats, quote, missed an opportunity to get the wall. I'm sure he's crying over it now. Here's Chuck Schumer talking about it.
That was part of a package. It was the first thing the president and I talked about was finishing it by, as he said, Tuesday night, 3 days. And the thought was that we could come to an agreement that afternoon. The president would announce his support, and then the Senate and House would get it done, and it would be on the president's desk. He didn't do that. So we're going to have to start on a new basis, and the wall offer is off the table.
Everybody knows it's going to be back on the table. But hey, congratulations, Democrats, you figured it out. When you're negotiating, the only strategy isn't just give, and give more. For the first time ever, the Democrats realized, what if we take something away? Is that how negotiations work? Yes, that's how it works. So what was the original deal? A dreamer plan written by a bipartisan group of 6 senators, including Jeff Flake, a Republican of Arizona, had included Trump's $1.6 billion request as part of a broader $2.7 billion border security package. So that was the deal. And now Trump said he wanted more, and then, as you guys all know, Schumer and the Democrats buckled and passed the budget, at least for 3 weeks, without anything in there for the dreamers. And Jeff Flake saying basically, don't worry guys, they're Democrats. they're going to do as they're told, says this. Senator Schumer's already indicated that he would go for more than $1.6 billion. Republicans will go for more. It's just how much more we can get from the Democrats. And I wish that wasn't true, but that has been the state of negotiations between Democrats and Republicans for the last 20 years. So yeah, the Republicans will go ask for more and the Democrats will very, very likely give it to them. So look, I applaud the move to actually finally take something off the table, but I would be shocked if they stuck with it and actually had effective and competent negotiations. Likely, Jeff Flake is right, Trump's estimation of the Democrats is right, and they will take a giant lead where the people are with them, overwhelmingly so, on the DREAM Act, 70 to 80% approval rating, and they'll blow it. And instead, they'll give Trump a lot of the money that he has asked for his stupid wall. And all that tough talk they said about how he was never gonna build a wall, they're gonna help him build it because they don't have it in them to fight. Okay. Now, last story for you guys in this hour. And then we got the town hall coming up, as you saw in a brief graphic there. Okay. So this story is disastrous. In the midst of the budget negotiations, they snuck something into that resolution that is potentially horrific and undermines our democracy. So The Intercept, with a great report from Alex Emmons and Ryan Grimm on this, they explain this provision, the provision first reported by The Intercept, appeared in the House version of the spending bill last week and modified the 70-year-old law that first chartered the CIA. It removed language that required intelligence agencies to spend money according to Congress's instructions and replaced it with a provision that allows the agencies to move money around freely and without Congress's knowledge. Oh boy. You understand that? They just passed into law that the CIA and the intelligence agencies don't have to check with Congress. Now they can move money around. Oh, cut off funding for what? That doesn't matter. I can move it around to a project. You authorize it, didn't authorize it, who cares? Rule of law, who cares? 3 branches of government, who cares? No, now the intelligence agencies can do any covert operation they like or perhaps build private armies. Yes, that is part of what they're going for here, and it is public. They've admitted it. I'll share it with you in a second. So, by the way, I thought the Republicans were against the deep state. That creates a worse deep state than we've ever had. Okay, so Blackwater founder Eric Prince has recently pitched the administration on a private intelligence force that would report directly to President Donald Trump and CIA Director Mike Pompeo. Well, that's exactly how fascism goes. The fascists go outside of the rule of law, outside of democracy, and outside of the normal branches of government, and they become unaccountable except to the executive, who then has his own private army that he uses for God knows what and crushes his opposition. So that planning has not only begun, Eric Prince bragged about it in an op-ed earlier, now it's been passed into law. Okay, the intelligence community in its latest grasp has gone too far for even Richard Burr, The Intercept explains. Richard Burr is a deeply Republican conservative from North Carolina. He said the Republican chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee has long been one of the Senate's staunchest advocates for the intelligence agencies, leading to fight to reauthorize surveillance programs and fighting to bury the results of the Senate's 5-year investigation into CIA torture. But he took to the Senate floor Monday to warn that it would compromise Congress's ability to oversee secret intelligence programs. And they didn't listen to him. Here's a guy who loves the intelligence community, who gave him carte blanche over and over again, who said, oh, torture, what's the big deal? I'll let you cover it up. But even he is going, whoa, this means they're totally unaccountable. They never even have to come back to Congress, and God knows what they could do with that private army and the private CIA that they're now forming. Burr said, quote, effectively, the intelligence community could expend funds as it sees fit without an authorization bill in place. Warning, 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 not heeded. They kept it in the bill and it passed. Now we go to Democratic Senator Mark Warner. He says, if this exemption is granted, and it was, you could potentially have an administration, any administration, go off and take on covert activities, for example, with no ability for our committee, which spends time and has the oversight to say time out or to say we actually disagree with that policy. Now, you think that this is theoretical? No, the planning has already begun and now authorized. So now we go to raw story for this part of the story. President Donald Trump is expected to choose the billionaire co-founder of Cerberus Capital Management, who has pushed for turning over the ongoing conflict in Afghanistan to mercenary armies and the CIA to lead the president's Intelligence Advisory Board. So now the president has an Intelligence Advisory Board that can help influence him in how to spend that money for his private armies. Now one more twist. So why does he care? Why does this guy from this capital management group care? The report also notes that Feinberg, that's his name, has no experience in government, unsurprising, aside from his massive investment in military contractor DynCorp, but did donate $1 million 5 days before the election to Rebuild America Now, a Trump-supporting super PAC that went hard after Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton. Now, do you understand that? So a guy who has a lot of money in a defense contractor did a legal bribe called campaign contributions to a super PAC to Trump of $1 million. And in return for that $1 million, and by the way, Eric Prince and his family, which includes the DeVosses, also gave a ton of money to Trump. And what do they get in return? They get a private army and a private intelligence agency within the United States government, funded by us, the taxpayers, but with no accountability. This is exactly how fascism begins. And now it's in the law, so it has begun. God help us all. Things are getting super, super dark. Okay, now into that darkness we introduce light. His name is Bernie Sanders. So we've got a Medicare town hall coming up right now. Here's what I need you to do. Go to either youtube.com/theyoungturks and you'll see a second stream. So you can watch that stream. It's still on the same channel if you're watching here at youtube.com/theyoungturks. If you're on facebook.com/theyoungturks, you could also do that. You can go to tytnetwork.com/live. And there you might have to refresh. But either way, stay here, and the town hall hosted by Anna Kasparian, featuring Bernie Sanders on Medicare for All, where we show you what the policies of the future can be and talk a little bit about hope that is beginning imminently. So in under a minute, so stay right here. right, welcome to the Young Turks coverage of the Medicare for All town hall that Bernie Sanders just had in Washington, D.C. A little bit later tonight, in about 20 minutes or so, we're gonna have Nina Turner on Rebel headquarters to talk about Medicare for All and what our revolution is doing to fight for it. She's the president of our revolution, which was started by Bernie Sanders. We'll also have some people who started watch events for this town hall. Curious to see how that went as well. All right, so Jimmy Dore, Cenk Uygur, John Iadarola with you guys, and I want to go through what we just heard there. So I've got it broken down into a couple of topics in my head. So let me start with numbers. So we just watched Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All town hall, and a couple of numbers stood out to me. First of all, 36 people, 36, I wish it was only 36, 36,000 people died last year and die every year because they don't have health insurance in America. Just let that sink in for a second. 9/11 was a little under 3,000 people. So that's 12 9/11s per year. But since it's not a spectacular event, it's not one covered every day, it doesn't happen to 36,000 people at once, we just ignore it. But it is a fact, it happens every year, and so it's unbelievable. And later in the town hall, they did an hour and a half. The last section was about how other countries handle healthcare and what we can learn from it. And in all the other developed countries, Norway, one of Donald Trump's favorite countries apparently, they had an expert from Norway on there who was a doctor from there, and they said it's unconscionable to think about not having insurance. People don't understand what that means. So Canada, same thing. So they're like, wait, I don't get it. You just let people die? And our answer seems vicious and deeply immoral to them. Yeah, we just let them die. And there was a doctor earlier in the program, we talked about people who come into the emergency room right before they die. And so the Republicans say, oh, you can go to the emergency room. They're like, yeah, but the person came in, they had no insurance, so they never did checkups, so we never caught their diabetes, so they come into the emergency room to die. And that's what we have in America. And so let's just acknowledge the depth of the problem. Then you talk about, how about finances? You know, Republicans always say, oh, it costs too much. No, it's the exact opposite of the truth. That's why it's maddening that this wasn't covered by cable news outlets, et cetera. We covered it, but it's so many of their advertisers put out this propaganda, which then you hear in cable news. But the reality is, it costs $9,800 per person in America for every person. Healthcare costs every year. So Canada has a life expectancy that is 3 years older than ours. They have a system measured by doctors and experts that is demonstrably better than us. They have better healthcare than us. You know how much it costs them? Well, if it costs $9,800 per person for us, it must cost them what, 15,000? We're 10,000, 50? No, 4,600. We cost 9,800, get worse results. They cost 4,600, get better results. So why are we doing this? Another doctor said, look, I spent half my time filling out insurance forms. Bureaucracy. We're talking about bureaucracy. All I deal with is insurance bureaucrats. Hey, my patient is dying, for God's sake, can I give them some sort of treatment? Well, I don't know, you fill out the forms and have them fill out the forms and we'll see what happens. And then she said, so some guy comes in and he's got a $4 deductible. The next person comes in, has the same exact problem, has a $1,200 deductible. Well, I mean, so what? So one of them gets to live, the other one gets to die because he doesn't have the $1,200. The doctor from Canada who was on later in the program said, you know, we have no deductibles. And just think about that for a second. And what a sigh of relief we would all have as a country. In all the rest of the developed world, let's say it's not practical. No, our system is the one that's not practical. It's the most expensive. It is double what almost all developed countries pay for worse results. And we stress ourselves out, like where am I gonna get healthcare? How can I afford it? Can I not afford it? So in Canada and all those other countries, no deductibles, no copays. On top of that, you've got no insurance forms. And this one actually got to me the most, I don't know why, but no medical bankruptcies. So no one has to ever worry, hey, I got cancer, so am I gonna lose my house? Am I gonna lose my business? Hey, my mom or my wife or my uncle, they had a stroke. Are we all finished? Are we all done? Because we all have to put all of our money in to try to save their life. and then we've lost our host, we lost our bankruptcy. For the rest of the developed world, they're like, what kind of a monstrous system says you get a healthcare problem and you don't have the right insurance, you picked the wrong thing, etc., and that's it, bankruptcy. If we could, we would have lower costs. And then finally, Bernie said, look, the good thing is we don't have to invent a new system. We already have it, it's Medicare. And it is among the top 2 most popular programs in the entire country. Social Security is number 1, Medicare is number 2. And all we have to do is let other people in. Another one of the businessmen that were in, and they had businessmen in there as well, and they said, well, look, we already have a system that works and that's incredibly popular, and it gives you some sort of relief. So like people are racing to get to 65. And they told a story about how people are coming and working at jobs they don't want to work at because it has decent health insurance. I actually know a story like that of someone who was really high up at MSNBC. In their 60s, he said he had to come back to MSNBC, come out of retirement because his wife was sick. And so they had to hang in there until they turned 65. So he had to go back to a job he didn't want to do, come out of retirement because they got sick. So then we just gotta make it to 65. Why do we, as a whole country, have to wait till we get to 65? We already have the system. Why don't we just let everyone in so we can all have a little bit of relief? And it's cheaper, so it makes no sense not to do it. Last thing for me is that here's why we do it. As Sanders again pointed out in the middle, the pharmaceutical industry alone, not the rest of healthcare, just the pharmaceutical industry, and not in campaign contributions, just in lobbying, spends $3.6 billion a year. So that's why we don't have a far more rational system that costs less, that covers people better, that allows us relief and decency and equality. The doctor from Norway said, we treat poor people, middle class people, and rich people the same. They all get health care. I mean, it made me think of what we used to talk about during the primaries, whisper of a dream. Could you imagine if in America we were all treated equally and it actually costs less money? And the only reason we don't is because we have an insane system where we allow them to spend billions of dollars corrupting our system through lobbying, campaign contributions. The #1 donors are not the oil companies, they're not the banks, it's the pharmaceutical companies. And lo and behold, they have monopolies. Medicare, the one problem with Medicare is because the government is so bought and corrupt by these companies, they're not allowed to negotiate with drug companies. Again, the woman from Norway, the guy from Canada are like, what do you mean you can't negotiate with drug companies? You represent the people. How could the companies rule the people? Well, that's what we have in America, and that's why we have the disaster system that we do.
Yeah, and I mean, look, as you point out, all we have to do is change the number on when you become eligible for it. We just put it down to 1, or I guess technically 0. And we know that government bureaucrats know how to do that. I mean, they keep pitching raising Social Security eligibility. They want to change that number. Okay, well, why don't we balance it out? Why don't we change this other number down there? We know that they can do it. That 36,000 is absolutely crazy. I would love to see, is there any other country that has sort of a per capita rate like that? And obviously we know we can expect that number is going to go up because the tax bill got rid of the individual mandate, and estimates say 13 million people will lose their health insurance because of that. And so that number is going to be higher now, more than 36,000. But yeah, the thing that I want to focus on briefly, and what I love about Bernie and why I love listening to him, is that they kept calling him like a pie in the sky progressive, but he's not. He's a fundamentally pragmatic politician. And he kept saying there, and I'm glad that he brought those healthcare professionals on to talk about this. Like, we need single payer, and I fundamentally believe that we're going to get it, and I don't think it's going to take too long. But that is not the end of history when we get that. As I try to remind people, there are people who haven't been born yet that will be born, grow up, go into politics, and then spend their careers trying to take out the single payer healthcare system we're going to set up. But even once we get the single payer healthcare system, that is just the beginning. I mean, in Canada, they're trying to make theirs better. In the UK, they're trying to make theirs better. That is just the beginning to a number of other foundational and structural changes we need to make, societal changes we need to make to take down the cost of healthcare and make sure that people get the best healthcare possible. This is just a very necessary and important first step in that direction.
John, I just want to add one quick thing to that. Bernie asked the experts, the doctors from Canada and Norway, Is there any politician in your country, and Canada had a conservative prime minister fairly recently, is there anyone, the most conservative politician you have in Norway or in Canada, who would suggest taking away single payer? And they again almost laughed out loud. Like, who would be crazy enough to suggest that? They'd get voted out of office immediately. Well, if every developed country that has single payer loves it so much that any politician anywhere in the political spectrum would immediately lose their job if they suggested taking it away, maybe there's something to that.
Yeah, but I think our country is so messed up. I mean, there are people who every year try to cut your Social Security benefits. There's people who try to kill Medicare and Medicaid every single year. I mean, these are insanely popular programs, perhaps the best government programs our country has ever had, and every single year we have to protect them from cuts. Well, we have sick politicians in our country.
Well, it's neoliberalism that wants to privatize everything, and so it's not even to one party, right? Because even Barack Obama had the grand bargain, which everyone knows was cutting Social Security and Medicare. So the thing that I loved, the thing I liked the most I heard tonight was when the woman from Cook County said, we already pay enough money for healthcare. We don't have to pay any more money to get healthcare for everybody in the United States. We don't have to pay 1 cent more. We already pay twice as much. So if people just thought about that, so when you have 30 million people left out of healthcare, even under Obamacare, we don't have to spend one more penny to insure all those people. That's just a mind-blowing thing. And then those 36,000 people wouldn't die every year. So that's the thing I think we got to keep pushing. Single payer doesn't cost any more money. That's the thing people need to remember. And not only, the only thing that was left out of tonight's discussion was the effect of income inequality on healthcare. I mean, on health outcomes, right? Because the greater the income disparity, the worse the health is for the poor people, but also for the richer people too. The greater according to a study, research shows negative effects of the health on even affluent, mainly because researchers contend inequality reduces social cohesion, a dynamic that leads to more stress, fear, and insecurity for everyone. So these two things go hand in hand. If we could get single payer, we would probably reduce some of the income inequality, right? Because people spend so much money on health care, and a family of four just to have insurance is up to $29,000 a year, according to. So you can address both things. You're going to single payer also addresses income inequality. The countries with the greatest income inequality have the worst health outcomes.
Super last thing. One of the businessmen talked about how Warren Buffett said that the healthcare cost is the tapeworm in the belly of our economy. It's actually hurting our businesses. It's not helping them. And then another one of the businesswomen there made a great point. She said it actually creates an incentive for companies to be more immoral. She said, if I have to pay I'm a decent person and I pay for my employees' healthcare, but the guy next door doesn't pay for their healthcare, says go get Medicaid, puts it on the taxpayers. Now they have a competitive advantage over me because they're more immoral than I am. Because I actually care about my workers. I want to make sure that they have healthcare. And that is an insane system. We should not have that system. And then Bernie pointed out, we're all subsidizing the Walton family who owns Walmart. I mean, because they paid the wages so low, they know that they've got to go to Medicaid. Their workers have to go to Medicaid, and we pay for their workers. And then they use that to drive mom and pop businesses out of business in the middle of America.
Yeah.
So none of this makes any sense. We've got to change the system. Luckily, the answer is really simple. We already have Medicare. All you got to do is say now everyone is eligible instead of just people over the age of 65.
Yeah.
All right, we're almost out of time here, so I want to do one last quick thing, okay? So during the Bernie's town hall on Medicare for All, I was checking Twitter and a bunch of conservatives tweeted in, and I was just amused, so I wanted to share it with you, and then an establishment guy too. So one of them said, yeah, well, if you like this kind of socialism for healthcare, why don't you go to Cuba or North Korea? And then a different one tweeted in, Cuba or Venezuela, because they're very creative. Or we can go to every other developed country in the world. Okay, so you don't have to go to a communist country. You don't have to go to, you know who has single payer? Norway, France, Germany,
Italy,
Japan, everyone, Canada, every other, there's no other developed country that doesn't have single payer. We're the outlier. We're the ones that let people die in the streets. And we're the ones that have the most expensive system for one of the worst outcomes. It makes no sense. All right, another guy emailed in, Oh yeah, I'll summarize the town hall for you. Everything is free, the rich will pay for it. I don't know how much it costs. They spent half the town hall talking about how much it costs. Okay, that's what happens if you don't actually listen and you don't actually watch. They explain the cost. Right now, it is the most expensive system in the world. It's destroying our economy and our competitiveness. It's costing you more money. It's leading you to bankruptcies. But you got brainwashed into talking points. And then finally, on the establishment side, somebody goes, "Oh yeah, there goes Bernie again, splitting the vote."
Ha!
Wait a minute.
What vote?
Wait.
Not everything's an election.
But if it were an election, he's the most popular politician in the country. So whoever your dumbass candidate is, they'd be splitting the vote.
Yeah.
Why does the most popular guy have to step down to a less popular politician in order to, quote unquote, not split the vote? So what we're asking you to do here is to actually think. Go beyond the talking points, go beyond the brainwashing, whether it comes from the establishment or the right wing, and actually listen. And if you listen to the town hall, like me and all of us here, you would have learned a lot. I learned a lot. There was a lot of numbers in there that I didn't know that I'm gonna use going forward.
Yeah. Those tweets did identify one big problem with single-payer healthcare, though. It might be great, but it can't cure stupid.
So even the Norwegians have not come up with an answer for that.
No, they've got morons there too.
All right.
Another great point that was brought up was they talked. Oh, we got to wrap. All right. It's just about food deserts, and I just was read an article yesterday about pharmacy deserts in near where I grew up on the south side of Chicago. This woman used to be able to now she has to take 2 buses to go to her thing, and sometimes they're not open. So anyway, it's
2 buses.
Yeah, just to get her prescriptions, and she's retired. She's old.
Yeah, and they mentioned that too in the town hall. All right, Jimmy Dore, John Iadarola, thank you so much, guys. You guys, we're coming right back. I'm going to do Rebel Headquarters. Nina Turner's our first guest. Can't wait to see what she says about this. And there's some nurses and others that have been fighting for Medicare for all. So we'll do that when we return. right, welcome to Rebel headquarters on a day that Bernie Sanders held a town hall event. We broadcasted along with Now This and Attention. Anna was one of the hosts of the event, and now we want to talk about it a little bit. Our first set of guests are Katie Robbins and Kim Behrens. They set up watch parties for Bernie Sanders town hall events. Katie is the director of Campaign for New York Health, and Kim is the member of New York State Nurse Association. Welcome to Rebel headquarters. How are you?
Hey, it's great to be here, Jake. Thanks for having us.
All right, no problem. And they're in our Washington office there. So first of all, a fun question. Just you just watched it. So how is the Medicare for All town hall? Did it live up to your expectations?
Well, I would say it's about time we had this national conversation. I'm so grateful to Senator Sanders and outlets like yours who brought this to hundreds of thousands, millions of people tonight, making the case for Medicare for All when unfortunately the mainstream cable networks have not been able to step up to the plate and do the job. So I'm thrilled that this conversation happened on the national level. And I think incredibly salient points were made by their expert panel. Kim, do you have anything to add?
I would add the same thing. One of the things I want to thank you for is actually asking a nurse, someone who's actually on the front lines of dealing with the patients that are affected by our current healthcare system. And so all of these political pundits and all the healthcare policymakers and all the people who talk about healthcare and how broken it is are never in direct contact with the patient. So I actually have a firsthand knowledge and experience with the people going through these issues.
All right, great. And so tell me about the watch parties a little bit. How did people sign up for it and how did it go across the country?
Well, my area is in New York State, and we had people all over the state. You know, we have a truly statewide movement for Medicare for All. We actually have a state bill that we advocate for in New York. We've passed our bill through the Assembly several times and have almost a majority of the Senate in support. So there's active chapters of our campaign all over who tapped into this opportunity to hear the case for Medicare for All. And we really linked the connection that our work in New York State is going to inspire people all over the country to follow our model if indeed New York is able to pass a Medicare for All system on the state level. So it was really exciting to have people sign up and invite their friends over to hear this national discussion take place for the first time. I mean, history really was made with this.
Kim, the nurses now all of a sudden in the last couple of years appear to be the most active union, the hardest fighting progressives in the country. What happened? How did the nurses all of a sudden become the progressive champions of the world?
Well, I think it's not a new phenomenon. In fact, part of the ANA Code of Nursing Conduct and Ethic is we have to advocate for the patients that we take care of. And healthcare justice and single-payer healthcare movement is right in, is congruent with our philosophies. So for us, we're really busy, but we have the direct contact with our patients. So we do know firsthand when someone comes in without adequate insurance or with insurance but can't afford the co-payments or all the other hurdles that they have to face. Our job is to advocate for them, and best way of advocating for them is being active and participating in the movement and to change the existing system.
So I wanted to ask both of you guys if you have personal experience with our current system and some of the failings of it that personally motivates you to be in favor of Medicare for All.
Well, I can talk about myself, but more I can talk about the people that I encounter every day. I worked last night and the day before, and I actually had a patient who came in, and he was really skinny guy. He had only just skin on his bones, and he's like around 65 years old. He came in, and I said, "So what's going on, sir? Are you eating well? Are you okay? Are you able to eat? Maybe he had some sort of issues swallowing." He goes, "No, look at me," and he opened his mouth, and I go, "He had no teeth. This guy hasn't had teeth for the last 5 years, and he has no access to dental care." And he said, "I can't eat anything. I can only eat soft foods." But because he's homeless, he has no means of preparing his food. So this guy has been slowly deteriorating away and not having teeth. That's outrageous. And then I had a patient not too long ago who decided that she had to leave the United States. She said, listen, I'm going back to Hungary, where I'm from. I've lived here for many years in the US. She was diagnosed with cancer. She couldn't maintain the job she had, which covered her insurance, but because she wasn't working, she lost her insurance. And finally she said, I have to give up. I mean, I can't maintain living in the US anymore. At least if I go back to Hungary, they have a healthcare system that I can rely on.
Yeah, it's funny. There's so many similar stories. The first doctor that Bernie Sanders talked to in the town hall talked about how they do these kind of a clinic, I guess, where they give away health care for people who don't have access to it here in America. I mean, it sounds like the kind of thing that you hear in a refugee camp, but we do it for our own citizens because we don't have universal coverage. So he said the main thing people came for was for the dentist. We have this crazy system where your teeth is removed from the rest of your body when it comes to insurance. And teeth are monumentally important, right? The worst pain I ever had in my life was a toothache, and if you have a problem with your teeth, it is urgent, right? And a lot of times people aren't covered for that. I have got family members from Taiwan. My wife is from there. That sometimes they just like your story from Hungary, they're going back to Taiwan to get health care. They had to move to get health care out of the country. So what the politicians tell you about, oh, everybody's coming to America for treatment. No, it's the exact opposite.
Absolutely not, absolutely not. Absolute medical tourism. I mean, myself, I got involved with this work a number of years ago when I graduated from university. I worked in social services in rural Ohio. I worked at the domestic violence shelter, actually, and encountered a number of families who would return to unsafe homes because they needed to stay on their abuser's health insurance plan because they needed to keep that insurance for maintaining chronic conditions and accessing medications for themselves and their kids. So this system is not just about how expensive it is, but we have a healthcare system that ties it to jobs and marriage, which really dictate people's life choices. I actually ended up getting married to my husband to make sure he could get on my health insurance plan at the time. And unfortunately, some folks stay in marriages that they shouldn't because of insurance issues. So it's really a quality of life issue in addition to the economic aspects of it, right? And I think a number of those points were made tonight in a really compelling way, particularly around the challenges of an employer-based system. We really need one that is not tied to any means testing. We need a healthcare system that is based on the fact that you're a human, you're here, you need healthcare, and it's going to be available to you without financial barriers. More of a public good.
Yeah, so again, in the town hall, there were a couple of moments that I thought were really interesting in that regard. One, they talked about people having to stay in jobs they don't like because otherwise they're not going to have insurance. And I told a story just before we got to Rebel headquarters as we were doing part of the coverage about I knew a fairly high-paid executive at MSNBC who had to come out of retirement, go back to work because his wife got sick, and they weren't 65 yet. It's such a crazy system that we have to wait till we're 65 to get decent health care and to get relief. And that word relief kept going through my head as I was listening to the town hall. In the other countries, the other developed countries where they have some form of single payer, they just have enormous psychic relief that they're not going to get bankrupted, that they can get any job they want instead of the job they have to get for insurance. They can don't have to worry about, there goes my deductible. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And then one more thing about that. There was a business owner on who said, he calculated the cost and it's $13.50 per hour, which is higher than the minimum wage in most of the parts of the country, for just healthcare costs for his employees. And then the other business person said, and if the business next door that I'm competing with decides that they don't care about their employees, they just don't provide it, and then the taxpayers have to pay for it. We get it, Medicaid covers it, right? So that hurts our competitiveness. It costs so much more money, and we have a vicious system that lets people die. If it wasn't, I mean, I know the answer to this, but you guys work on it every day. If it wasn't for the money in politics, would any of this ever stand in a real democracy?
I think it's more than money in politics. There's the way our current system is operating under an insurance-based for-profit model is inherently geared towards failing the people who need the actual health care. Let me cite an example. We have massive corporate welfare system where big pharmaceutical companies could be based outside the United States. They share or they profit from the being, having a market share of the American economy and selling it at exorbitant high prices, but don't pay the taxes because they have an office in Ireland, right? But they can charge twice, 3 times more than any other countries pay for their medications. So we subsidize the corporations and they're allowed to get away with it. That itself, to me, is a crime. And the policymakers are just as wrapped up in this form of, system that we were, under.
I also think one of our challenges is education. There's really been many years of propaganda put out by insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies claiming that healthcare in other countries is deplorable and that we have things to fear from the idea of a national health insurance program. But what happened tonight is that we started the conversation. We got facts to the American people. We recognize that once people understand it, it's incredibly popular. And so I think that we're really building the kind of movement that needs to take on the powerful interests that have controlled this debate for so long. And so I'm really grateful for everyone who made the event happen tonight to get the ball rolling on that.
Yeah, most especially, of course, Senator Sanders. Katie, I actually had one more question for you, and just to back up the points you guys were making, Bernie Sanders pointed out tonight that the 5 largest pharmaceutical companies made $50 billion in profits last year. So it's one thing if you earn it in a free market. It's another thing if you capture the government and create monopolies for yourself and create this perverted system where you profit off of our losses. And so those are the issues we have to fix. But Katie, the question I had for you was, you're fighting on a state level for universal health care. So just tell us a little bit more about that, because I haven't heard much about that before, and I want to make sure the audience hears about it.
Sure. Well, currently over 20 states have state single-payer legislation. California and New York have had a lot of momentum on the state level. In New York, we actually have passed our bill that would create a universal single-payer system for all New York residents 3 times in the assembly. We had, at the end of last session, we had 31 Senate co-sponsors. You actually need 32 votes to pass the bill in the state Senate. So we're really building up a lot of momentum. Now, if you follow New York politics, you know that currently Republicans are in control in the state Senate and have not, unfortunately, we don't have any Republican co-sponsors yet. We are working on that. But essentially, in this era when especially there's so much fear from policies coming out of Washington that are going to cut funding for healthcare programs and potentially dismantle the ACA, that people are really afraid. And New Yorkers want a dedicated universal program to make sure that they're protected no matter what Washington does. And the thing that's important to remember is that because in the country and also on the state level, we spend so much on healthcare that we actually don't have to spend any more money to make sure that we have a universal, high-quality healthcare system for every resident in New York State. Now, we really hope that New York helps to set the trend. Other states will follow, and we hope that shortly the entire country will have such a system. But we think that it could be an example that other states in the country can learn from. In Canada, they passed it province by province. And we believe this is good policy and also good politics. In Canada, the father of Canadian Medicare, Tommy Douglas, is voted most popular Canadian year after year, and he's been dead for a while. People love the Canadian Medicare system. And that political legacy is on the table in New York State and in the country right now.
Well, it is refreshing to hear about a country whose biggest hero is not someone that was involved in a war, but that actually saved people's lives. That is good to hear. So thank you so much for being on. You know, I think that I certainly would like to have more conversations on this program on Rebel Headquarters about how to do it state by state and how Canada did it in the way that you're describing. So hopefully we'll have you guys back on at some point to talk about those extra issues as we sort all this out. So Katie Robbins and Kim Behrens, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Yep. All right, so I heard that we're having a little bit of trouble reaching Nina Turner. We're gonna take a quick break here. When we come back, if we don't have Nina, then I will give you a little bit more of a summary of what happened in the town hall, because I think there's some really important points that we didn't get to yet that I wanna share with you guys. So come right back. All right, back on Rebel Headquarters. So Nina can't be on today, but I do have a couple other things that I wanted to share with you guys. First of all, I want to do some tweets. Sandra O said, I have a friend who needed hip replacement and had to wait until she turned 65, i.e. until she had Medicare. We're sitting around sick, waiting to get to the finish line of 65. People in a decent society shouldn't be looking forward and breathlessly waiting for the age of 65. There's something obviously very wrong. Sandra O also said, cool, Jimmy Dore's in the house. I agree, it was cool. Angel Grace says, heck, I know people who have married people they didn't really want to marry just for health insurance. How sad. And one of our guests just talked about how people are not getting divorced which I guess the conservatives might be happy about. Anyway, because they have to stay on the health insurance of their partner. Okay, member shout outs today are Omar Bazian and Bailey Wilkins. And I want to thank the members today, especially on a day like today where we did this Medicare town hall with Bernie Sanders. Anna Kasparian was one of the hosts of it. And we couldn't have done that without you guys. And they literally needed independent media because cable news wouldn't do it. And we stepped up to the plate, which means you stepped up to the plate. So thank you. tytnetwork.com/join, of course, to become a member. All right, now I want to just do 2 clips for you guys. So in Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All town hall, he had a number of experts on. One of them was Dr. Fagan. And she talked about how long people wait to get treatment because a lot of them don't have insurance and what the cost of those are. I want to let you watch that and then comment on it.
36,000 people died in the United States in 2016 as a result of being uninsured. And that we base access to health care in this country on your ability to pay for it and not on your need for care. I could tell you about a 56-year-old cook with hypertension who had no medications and had a stroke on his way home from work. I could talk about the 64-year-old salesman, also with hypertension, who thought he could wait until he turned 65 and got Medicare to take care of his high blood pressure. But that little bit of nausea he developed was kidney failure, and now he needs dialysis. I could tell you about the 50-year-old with diabetes who had no medication, who came in with his blood sugar so high that he developed such severe nausea and vomiting, he tore his esophagus. So he came in to see us bleeding, dehydrated, and in diabetic ketoacidosis. But I probably will never forget the 54-year-old woman who was a nurse's aide, who came into us after struggling for months with difficulty swallowing, and we diagnosed her with advanced esophageal cancer. And I remember telling her that we could put in a feeding tube and talking to her about putting her affairs in order. And she wanted me to arrange for her radiation treatment to be given in the early evening or late afternoon so that she could continue to work. Because what she knew was that if she couldn't continue to work, she wouldn't be able to pay her bills, including her rent. And if she couldn't pay her bills, nothing else mattered.
So 2 things about that. One, for the rest of the developed world, our system is barbaric. So we have these stories of dying people and they don't have insurance. 36,000 people a year die from not having insurance or getting treatment and then they got to go into work and get treatment and go to work in the later stages of those illnesses because we have this draconian system. They had on experts later in the town hall that talked about Canada's system and Norway's system. And Bernie Sanders asked them, is there any politician, no matter how conservative they are, no matter how right-wing they are in your countries, that would ever say to get rid of single payer? And they said no, that would end their career immediately. Single payer in those countries is so enormously popular that even suggesting taking it away as a right for all human beings that live in their country would mean an immediate end to your career. Isn't that amazing? So once you institute it, it is so popular. And by the way, it's not that surprising. One of the most popular programs in America is Medicare. So, but we only do it for people above the age of 65. Another guest on the program said, we fight for the people who are above 65. We go in there and we fight the drug companies and we fight to lower prices. We fight on so many different levels for them because we represent them. Why don't we fight for anyone else? Why do we have to wait till 65 to get treatment and hear all of these terrible stories? When we know that not only is it practical, not only is it cheaper, not only is it more effective, they have longer life expectancy, better medical results than the rest of the developed world, but that it's not just the right thing to do, but it's the thing that actually gets us the treatment that we need and allows us to have health care for all of our citizens. It just doesn't make any sense not to do it. And it would be so popular that you could never take it away. And maybe that's the final bottom line here, which is that a lot of people make a lot of money and a lot of profit off of our healthcare industry. Now, that doesn't go towards better care for you All those ads and marketing doesn't go towards better care for you. It goes for their profits. And that's part of why our system is the most expensive and does not deliver the results. And what they're gonna do is they're gonna fight you tooth and nail. Bernie talked about how just the pharmaceutical companies spent $3.6 billion a year on just lobbying. That's an amazing amount of money. They're not spending $3.6 billion for their health or for your health. They're spending that money so they can keep that gravy train going. But that's actually costing us a ton of money, and it's also costing us lives. Let's go to a system that actually takes care of all of us. It's not too much to ask for. Look, I've got one last clip for you guys, and it's related to costs. So Medicare for All town hall by Bernie Sanders. They also brought on business people to talk about how this affects their businesses and the economy. Let's go to Richard Masters, the CEO of one of the companies that they were talking to. Let's watch.
Our company employs 180 people in Pennsylvania and throughout the United States. Our healthcare bill is $2.8 million a year. It cost $27,000 to insure an employee with a family. That's $13.50 an hour, which is, if you put this into context, it is about as much as 1/3 of the population can't make in a year. So this is an outrageous cost. We're beyond the tipping point at this point. We have really got to do something to control costs. Now, we look at the Medicare for All solution. Right now, we are spending about 18% of payroll for healthcare costs, for health insurance. We look at Medicare, the model for Medicare for All, it's 10%. We could be saving tremendous amounts of money, and we would be relieving our employees of the anxiety of maybe not being able to pay their deductibles and copays.
That same CEO later on said, you know, our insurance policies keep putting pressure on us, asking us how many older workers we have and how we can move them out by giving them the right incentives. Because the older workers cost more in insurance and they don't want to pay that. So the insurance companies push you to get your older workers out. How sick is that system? So now he's obviously a decent person and does not cave into that pressure. The woman sitting next to him also runs a business. She talked about how if my competitors don't pay their health care and just let the American taxpayers pay for it from Medicaid, they'll have a competitive advantage. So now we've set up an incentive to push older people out of their jobs and an incentive to make sure that you are less moral and care less about your own workers. This is madness through and through. And finally, when you're talking about dollars and cents, I mean, look, 2 points he made there. One is about the $13.50 per hour per employee in healthcare costs. You know the national minimum wage is $7.25, almost half that number. That's crazy. The minimum wage is $7.25. If you hire someone, it costs $13.50 if they have a family per hour to take care of them. And then that is loaded onto the businesses. So it doesn't make any business sense either. That's why Warren Buffett said it's a tapeworm in the belly of our economy, eating away at our competitive advantages vis-a-vis other countries. It doesn't make economic sense. It doesn't make moral sense. And it's literally killing us, the 36,000 people every year that die from not having insurance, and the rest of us that have shorter life expectancies than countries like Canada because we have a worse healthcare system. And finally, to wrap all of that up, an example that one of the doctors gave earlier was, she said it's easier to control blood pressure during checkups than it is to pay for treatment when someone has a stroke. So that's why our system costs about $10,000 per person. Canada is half that, less than half that, at $4,600. And they have a better system that takes care of people better, has better medical results. So we're overpaying because we don't let them have checkups and regular things that they need, and they're worried about their deductibles and they're worried about medical bankruptcies. If we just had Medicare for All, a lot of those problems would not exist, and instead we'd have a humane system that actually makes more economic sense. All right, I think I've done enough talking for one day. Thank you for watching Rebel Headquarters and the Young Turks and the town hall coverage. And want to also say Anna Kasparian did a great job of moderating there. And we'll see you guys tomorrow.